we had some, you know, big players in the south. Stephen Little would have been the star. Ronnie Bolton, a man called from Oxford called John Turner, big player. Taffy, Victor Chandler on the rails was a big player. John Banks was a big player. And the ring became pretty strong. So, as I say, the hot mob didn't have to play off course. They play on course because the market was strong. And it was good for me because I could see what they were doing. And I would, you know, as I say, I've always thought I wasn't a great judge of horses, but I thought I were a very good judge of a judge. There were big players in the ring that got to know different things from different training yards, and I became very, very friendly with the best man I ever knew in racing. His name was Leslie Woods. He was a wonderful man. He'd learnt me a lot of things. He was a very respected man that was trusted, and certain trainers, Dick Hearn was his major lead, and when Newbury was on, he used to go to East Isley where Dick Hearn trained, and he'd stay with him on the Friday night for the Saturday. Now, they weren't great boozers, but they liked the odd drink with dinner, and they'd only drink the best. And Leslie stayed at East Isley with Dick Hearn, and Dick Hearn's name was Sheila. And Dick said, Sheila, get that bottle of port, whatever it was. He said, up the cellar for me. He said, Leslie would like a drink and I'd like a drink. He then said to Leslie, I've got a horse and it's certainly as good as anything I've had. He said, and I think there's quite a big chance that it might win the Derby. The horse was called Nashua. Willie Carson used to ride it. And he said, Dick said to Leslie, can you get me 200 quid on? Leslie said, certainly. At the time, the horse was 6-7-1. But a few of us, 3 or 4 of us, who Leslie told, we all said that we'd put 50 or 60 quid in. And cut a story short, Leslie returned him a 30-100 to 2, 16-1. He then kept in touch with Leslie. Everything's fine, this and that. Come the morning of the race, Leslie said, phone Dick Hearn. He said, Dick, I don't want you to think I'm getting busy. He said, I'll poke him my nose in. He said, but something I have to tell you. He said, you've had a 30-100 to 2. He said, it's now a very short price. He said, and Dick, what you should be doing is taking your 200 quid back. He said, and you'd have in the region of 2.5 grand for nothing. His answer was, Dick, he said, Leslie, you're not poking your nose in. I appreciate your call very much. He said, but Leslie, if I was a gambler, instead of taking me 200 quid back, he said I should be having more on. He said, everything I've asked this horse to do, it's done. Willie Carson, he said, Willie thinks the world of it. And at the time, Willie Carson had a friend called Homer Scott. He was a trainer. They grew up together in Glasgow. And Homer liked to bet. Became a trainer, Newmarket, and as I say, Willie was very friendly with him. Now, where we got more confidence with Nashua were that a good lead also in the yard were friendly with Willie Carson. And he said to Homer, he said, look, Homer, he said, this horse is a bit temperamental. He said, but I've never rode better. He said, however, Derby Day, first race is at 2 o'clock. The second race is at 2:35. He said, then there's an hour gap to the Derby. He said, now what with the carnival atmosphere, big wheels going round, and all different things happening, a horse could lose its race before it went to... They used to have to walk right across the downs from where the horse boxes, what they travelled in, was. And walking right across the downs, he said, what with carnivals and big wheels and different things happening, he said, and an hour, he said they could just get themselves at it. He said, but Homer, he said, if this was a race around Lingfield, Kempton, Sandown in the week, not on a Saturday, he said, I would be telling you to have a massive bet. Cut a story short, it finished up, we all had another couple of quid when we heard that story. Willie thought the world of it, Dick Earn thought the world of it, and apparently everything they'd asked it to do, it passed with flying colours. And the, news of it was very, very strong. To cut a story short, as you know, it went on to win quite comfortable. And we'd all had a touch, thank God. And as I say, Leslie was very, very friendly with Dick Earn. He was also very friendly around Ian Balding. And Ian Balding trained a horse called Reef, which we backed. Not massive bet, but we backed it. To cut a story short, Leslie was now getting on, became pretty old. He'd have been 70s. So he said, Johnny, he said, I want you after this race. He said, I want you to do something for me. So after the race, he said, now come here. He said, I want to introduce you to somebody. It turned out that his name was Archie, and he was very hot round Ian Balding's horses. So Leslie said to Archie, he said, Archie, he said, I'm getting on now. He said, I won't be as round every day like I always was. He said, and if you ever want anything done, he said, and I'm not there, he said, this is Johnny Lights. He said, you give him what to do, whatever you want. He said, you'd always have the best of it. He said, and I would be responsible. So Archie never heard or see him. But one day he came to the rail. It was at Newbury. I saw him and he said to me, excuse me, Johnny. He said, is Leslie around? I said, no, Arch. I said, he's not. I said, but there were no mobiles then. I said, he's at the Victoria Club playing Kaluki. I said, I can get him. He said, okay. He said, can you do me a favour and put me £400 on a horse? I said, certainly, Arch, leave it to me. I then went on the phone to Leslie. I said, Leslie, first time he's ever came to me, but the guy you introduced me to has come to the rail looking for you. Okay. I said, he's given me 400 quid to have on a horse. He said, Johnny, you're making a mistake. He said, I've done his business for many, many years, and the most I've ever known him to have on was 200 quid. He said, I want you to go back to the bar where he'll be. Told me exactly where he'd be in members. And I went back. I said to Archie, look, Archie, I've just spoke to Leslie. And, you know, he asked me to ask you if he could, you know, if he could back it. Ian thinks it's the best he's had since Mill Reef. He said it's owned by the same guy, Paul Mellon, same colours. He said, and he thinks it's Forest Flower, the horse was called. He said, and he really thinks it'll win. Leslie said to me, he said, oh, he said, put me £1,000 on. Now, £1,000 for Leslie was much more than he'd normally have on. But he was very good at measuring out, and he learnt me that he would measure his bets out according to whatever the leader on, who told him. And cut a story short, the first bet I got was a 15,000 weight with Stephen Little. There was another very big player on the rails called Michael Simmons. He bet for Heathorn. I went to him, I got 7,500 to 4. Because what with Archie 400 quid and Leslie £1,000, Leslie always learnt me to measure it out who's told you had on. Cut a story short, Stevie called from rode it, come up the outside, it hacked up. Never turned out. I think it was 2-3 weeks later, it ran Royal Ascot. The big 2-year-old there, the Coventry. Running again. So Leslie made a couple of inquiries again with Archie, and Archie said, look, he said, I want to back it, Leslie. He said, but I don't want nothing like the 400 quid on. He said, I want you to put me 150 quid on. To cut a story short, ran in the commentary, it hacked up again. That was that. Um, there was some real good leads about. And Leslie Woods, I've wrote a chapter on him here. He was really, absolutely the man I always trusted, and outside of my family, my lovely daughters and Megan, there's very, very few people in the world that I trust with my life. But Leslie, I would have trusted him. He learnt me many things. My weakness would have been if we backed a couple of losers early. I used to go at the chase to try and get out of it. And he was very close to me. He said to me, "Come on, let's get out of here." He said, "There's no last race." He said, "They start again tomorrow at 2:00. He said, and that was it. Out we went. Now, the help he gave me was immense, because he was now getting on, and he'd been with lots of not lots, but 10 or 12 trainers over the years that trusted him with their few quid to have on. And he was wonderfully respected by them. Everybody loved Leslie Woods. He didn't deal in bad, he only dealt in good. He only, dealt in the truth. He didn't deal in lies. And as I say, he had a lifetime of being on race courses from a very young age. And in the 60 years he'd been on the course, he became friendly with different trainers over the years. George Todd was a good lead of his. Not Peter, but Mick used to be, was a good lead of his. And different trainers, he had some real good leads. He went on to say, he absolutely taught me lots. As I say, unfortunately, later on, be 5 or 6 years ago now, maybe 6 or 7, he became ill and he unfortunately passed away. Not going to his funeral broke my heart, but unfortunately I was fighting sepsis at the time, I was fighting for my life. But he was an absolute joy. He liked to joke, he was fun, he was a wonderful experienced man at the races, and what he taught me, different bits and pieces, I could never ever have repaid him. From there, it absolutely killed me. As I say, I couldn't go to his funeral. I thought at the time, the media, where the paper was the major, I think it may have well been the Post. I think the Sporting Life had gone. I thought they should have made a bigger thing about his death. I think all it was 3 lines. And it said, "A well-known player in the South has unfortunately died, Leslie Woods. Now, I thought he should have had a lot more respect. There was also people that should have been to the funeral, never went. I thought, that were pretty poor.